I don't remember what I was doing, but I was on Facebook and I found this photo of myself, and it's on a mission trip, and I have my short hair. I'm wearing a baseball cap backwards. I have a t-shirt, basketball shorts, and like work shorts, and I'm like hanging on a beam like this, and I'm like, that girl thought she was straight for about 3 more years. Ain't it a wild thing?
Yeah. That girl was like, no, just men for sure. Yeah.
I am straight. Like you're straight. Me too.
Me too. I also am heterosexual. Yes, hello. Yes, hi.
I'm Jen.
I'm Liz.
And we're Harmless Harlots.
What does that mean?
To us, it means being open to having more than one relationship, however you define it, as long as everyone gives fully informed, enthusiastic consent.
It's also an homage to our poly Bible, The Ethical Slut, which we recommend if you want to learn more.
We are enthusiasts, not experts in this field, so if you want to learn and explore along with us, we give you our knowing, enthusiastic consent to come along. Okay, so I was a little hesitant about recording today because I was feeling kind of down because I had a teleconference meeting with a therapist because I reached out to one through my school because I don't know. It's my theory that I have some sort of anxiety disorder since it runs in our family fairly prevalently.
You are very anxious, as are we all.
And I am an anxious person, and Leah has pointed it out as well. So I set up an appointment with this woman, and we were on the call, and she was like, yeah. Well, so the first red flag was she was like, are you an intuitive person? And I was like, well, I know this isn't science, but I'm really into Myers-Briggs, and I'm INFJ, and the N means intuitive, blah blah blah. And she was like, oh, see, you mentioned science, and you should know I'm not a very Western practitioner. I do mind-body connectivity and Buddhist psychology. And I was like, interesting way to phrase that. Okay. And then in that list of things she was talking about doing, she's like, I also do astrology. And I get a lot of shit from my friends who like astrology because I like Myers-Briggs, which is a not, rigorously scientifically proven thing. But
it's
it is
more scientific than astrology.
Yeah. So anyway, so that was the second red flag. And then the third one, she I don't know, we had a good conversation because she was like, oh, tell me about yourself and blah blah blah. We were talking. And then she was like, are you dating anyone right now? And I was like, she had also mentioned something about my haircut, and I was like, yeah, I guess just so you should know, I do identify as part of the queer community and the polyamorous community, just so you know. And she was like, no, I've worked with queer people before. And I was like, okay, that's good. And she's like, and I've talked to polyamorous people before. And I was like, oh. And she was like, the polyamorous people, I just feel like their energies are so clouded and they're so confused because, they've just got so many connections going on. I know. I was sitting there with a face oh, interesting. But on the inside, I was like, oh, well, this isn't going to work.
This isn't going to work.
And so she was like, yeah, no, it just seems with so many relationships, they're just so confused and overloaded. I was like, okay, interesting take. And then she was like, and the science. And I was like, you just said you don't use science.
You just said that you didn't like science. What?
But she was like, oxytocin is the bonding chemical, neurochemical, and you just can't do that with many people. And I was like, interesting takes. I don't care to try to convert you, so I'll just nod along. But I don't know. It got me in a mood.
That's not a battle you're gonna win.
Yeah, so I probably will not reach out to her again. But it just got me in a mood because I was like, is polyamory not real? I don't know.
No,
I don't know.
Finding good therapists is hard. There are a lot of therapists out there that are bad. Like, not everybody with a license to be a therapist is a good therapist. So I would not.
Well, so I had two conflicting feelings because the first one was like, whenever I'm criticized, I immediately imagine the other person is right before I disprove them. Like they are right before I disprove them. So I've been kind of in a funk all day being like, I don't know, maybe polyamory isn't real. But also after having that experience and being like, we do need more polyamorous therapists out there. So now I'm like, I probably should become a polyamorous therapist because like that was an unpleasant experience. Because she was just like, oh, she was so off put by it. It was
Anybody
such
who
a strange
starts off a
interaction.
conversation being like, I don't really do science, just run far away. Just far, far away.
But I don't know, because like she was like, yeah, I normally work with like really intuitive people, and I was like, I mean, I'm kind of into that. Like, I am intuitive, but then yeah, just those three red flags are the reasons why I will not be going back to her.
On a side note, I really do like this haircut on you. It works quite well with your face. It does.
Thank you. I ordered a like clipping kit like mom has, and it was only like $20, and it's like a clipper and like scissors and like a bunch of extensions, and like now I never have to now I paid that $20 once, and I never have to pay $20 for a haircut again. Leah is considering re-perming my hair because the roots are kind of coming in straight, and we can't have straight, can we?
We can't have straight. That would be bad.
We're just kidding. We're inclusive. All sexualities are valid.
While we're talking about unpleasant experiences of our days, yesterday was my city's LGBTQ Day on the Hill is what they call it, because traditionally every year they go to the hill where the Capitol is and talk about legislation. But this year, because of COVID, it was all on Zoom, which was fine. The legislation we have proposed right now in the state in which I reside is fucking appalling. It's goddamn insane. Like, it's literally so regressive. So the group did a really good job of putting together a list of like, here are all the policies that are threatening LGBTQ people. Here are the senators sponsoring them. Here's who you can call. Template you can say. Like, it was great stuff. But some of them are so insane. So I'm trying to put together a thing at my work where we write some letters. The two I decided I wanted our office to focus on are, one of them literally just removes gender identity as a protected class. So like it literally just says right now we have a Civil Rights Act in our state and it lists out all the protected classes. So it's got like sex, race, age, yada, yada, yada. And one of them is gender identity. And this proposal is like, we want to take out gender identity as a protected class, which like, how evil do you have to be? Like, how can you possibly think you're on the right side of history if you're like, hey, you know, these people we protect? Yeah, we want to stop doing that. Like, what would the motivation ever be other than like, we would like to be able to freely attack these people? Like, just how big of a dickbag do you have to be to just, anyway. The second one I decided to have my work focus on, if we get approved to do a letter writing campaign of some sort, was, what was the second one? I remember. Okay, so the other one was something about it. It was a very, very broad bill that was like it made a bunch of things legal. But one of the things, if you read the language carefully, it said an employer can make decisions on hiring, firing, punishing, whatever people based on their sexual orientation or gender identity. And the way it worded it was, it was a religious protection thing where it was like, if your employer has the religious belief that marriage is between a man and a woman, or that like the sex you're assigned at birth is your sex, then because of that religious belief, they can make employment decisions based on your identities. And I was like, guys, we are past this. It is 2020 fucking one. We are past this conversation. We are no longer talking about whether or not you can fire someone for being gay. That's not a thing we're going to do anymore. What the fuck? But this bill is literally like, yeah, no, we want to make that a thing again. And like, no, we're not doing that anymore.
What did I saw? I think it was an Instagram thing where it was like this video and this guy was like, I'm gonna get a lot of flack for this, but like, I don't think that gays should have the right to marriage. And he was like, but I don't think anyone should have the right to marriage. I think that if you want legal protections, you should get a civil union, and marriage is completely religious, and like
Okay,
religion
okay.
can do fuck all they want. I know,
Yes,
right?
I agree with that. It started out rocky, and then I was like, "Wait, actually, no, I'm on board. This is good. I like that." Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
religion is so weird, and like I don't know if I'm ready or prepared to take on all religious communities, but it's just like some religions are wrong.
The separation of church and state, why do we let religion into any of this? Like, our country was literally founded on, like, we're gonna have religious freedom and separate the church and the state, and now we have all these legislative bills about religious things, and, like, they're all Christian stuff. Like, it's not even like they say religion, they mean Christianity. Like, it's all I can't,
Yeah.
I can't do
Well,
it.
I guess I don't know. I guess in the thought experiment of that, it's like I don't know where my mind goes. It's like how do I draw distinction between like allowing like a student to wear a hijab when like that's technically against dress code as opposed to like letting someone bar gay rights.
Wait, what?
So if you say if the bill is like gay, we can fire people if they're gay because of religion,
Mhm.
then if we say no, you can't do that, then are we also saying like no, you can't wear a hijab just because it's your religion?
Oh, because that's also a religious thing. I mean, obviously, no, I'm not saying that, but, I'm trying to,
Well,
yeah.
no, but I'm just trying to think of like what is the distinction, which like morals, but also
Yeah, not being a shitty person is the distinction in my mind. Um, I don't know. I don't understand why people are so threatened by this. Like, even here's the thing, the Bible outlines a lot of things as sins. And first of all, it actually doesn't outline being gay as a sin if you read the Bible
yeah,
and study the text and stuff, but people think it does. Whatever. We're not
yeah,
going to get into that debate. Even if you think that the Bible says being gay is a sin, the Bible says a lot of different things are sins, and we don't freak out about those as much as we
yeah,
do being gay. And I don't understand why this is the hill Christians have decided to die on. And they are dying on it because people are leaving the Christian church because they're like, this is ridiculous. I don't know why
yeah,
they've decided this is the end all be all. Like, this sin we won't stand for. Like, why of
yeah.
all things have we chosen to focus on this?
Well, I mean, like, what I've been thinking about a lot recently is like, sure, someone had to make up the law, and like, someone had to make up that translation and enforce it, and like, why for like, being gay? Because like, all evil stems from agriculture. We have established that, but like, what about the post agricultural society creates homophobia? Because I was thinking, it's like I mean, sure, like we do need to like reproduce a lot in agricultural society in order to like, create enough labor. But at the same time, it's like if two men are gay, then it's two less men competing for women. So like from a straight man's point, it's like, why do you care?
So my friend's theory of why straight men are so threatened by homophobia is if they acknowledge that gay men exist, they have to acknowledge that they are also subject to being raped. And that is a scary thing because, I mean, women live with the reality of being raped every day, and it's obviously horrible. But men, by and large,
I
if we
suppose.
don't acknowledge that gay men exist, women can rape men. It does happen, but not as often. Men are less likely to be raped by a woman, although it does happen. I do want to acknowledge that it's very real. It does happen. It's equally
Yes.
traumatizing.
Yes.
However, if gay men did not exist, men would have a significantly lesser chance of being raped. Whereas if gay men do exist, straight men, I think, Men perform rape on both women and men more than women perform rape on both women and men.
Yeah, no, I don't know. Homophobia. So if one of my classes is on evolutionary psychology and it's about ideology and we have to write a paper on like a viewpoint that we don't identify with, and I've been trying to think about doing homophobia. So like I really want to like research because like I really don't get it like from an evolutionary standpoint of like why people care. I don't know. But you mentioning rape reminded me of something I wanted to address because as I was listening to the last podcast, I was like, I was throwing around the word trauma left and right. And I was like, I don't actually know like the accurate / real definition of trauma. So I do want to acknowledge that I may have overused that.
Well, I don't know. I mean, what's the definition of trauma? Like, I think you can still claim trauma from things you've been
Here
through.
on Integrated Listening System, when I Google what is trauma, this says trauma is the response to deeply distressing or disturbing event that overwhelms an individual's ability to cope, causes feelings of helplessness,
Yeah.
diminishes their sense of self and their ability to feel a full range of emotions and experiences. So I don't know. I guess I just don't know.
I think your experience as a child, you could still say you have trauma from. I don't like this whole comparative trauma thing of like my trauma is worse than your trauma. Like it's not constructive for anything. Like I don't go around saying like my friends like I was raped. I'm like, oh yeah, well I lost my virginity to rape of 2 men. Beat that. Like it's not constructive to do that. I think if what you went through, you feel you experienced trauma, then you can say that. Like that's I'm not gonna be like
I guess.
make you qualify your trauma.
I guess. I just want to make sure I don't like belittle anyone else's trauma by being like, I don't know, throwing it around too much. Anyway, I just wanted to say that. But speaking of other things we talked about in the last episode, do you remember when I told you that theory of like, I think that the reason long-term monogamy does not work is because you start to see long-term nesting partners as family and that kicks in your incest thing. And I was like, but this is just a theory. I don't know. And you were like, that's gross. And I was like, I agree.
Let me
Well, guess
you
what,
found
Liz?
research. Did I guess right?
well, I found it in this good old Sex at Dawn here now, didn't I? And I'm going to read you the quote. And right next to it, I wrote, I was right in big cap letters.
You mark up books so much. For the listeners, Jennifer puts in all of these sticky notes. But when I bought The Ethical Slut for myself and I let Jen borrow it, when she gave it back to me, it was completely marked up. And I was like, Jen, this was my book I let you borrow. And she was like,
yeah, to highlight the main points.
She wrote my book.
Oh, side tangent story. In high school, I borrowed an ACT prep book from our social studies teacher. And I don't know why, I just didn't even think about it, but I wrote, like, it has practice tests. And so I just wrote straight in the book and I gave it back to him. And he was like, what the fuck, Jen? And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, no one else can use this now. And I was like, you know what? You right. So anyway.
Jennifer has no respect for people's property. Go on.
Well, I'm also just terrible to books in general because, like, I'm often eating when I'm reading. And so, like, I'll just drop food on them and wipe it off and be like, you're fine, keep going. I see books as living creatures.
Never let Jennifer borrow your books.
Anyway, so the theory that I created last time was because I listened to the audiobook of another book called Mating in Captivity. And they do reference that book in Sex at Dawn, which is the book that I've been reading in print. And it has taken me a long time to get through. But I did finally finish it this week. It'll take a few more weeks for us to cover all of the content in it because there is so much. But I have finished it. I feel very accomplished. Anyway, enough preamble. Here's the quote that will rock your world.
Ready.
So, when a couple have, that's a weird phrasing, when a couple have been living together for years, when they've become family, in italics, this ancient anti-incest mechanism can effectively block eroticism for many men, leading to confusion and hurt feelings all around. I was right. Long-term monogamy is not sustainable. Pair bonding is unnatural. You heard it here.
Speaking of hurt feelings on the side of the woman, I was listening to a podcast this week, and it was talking about how like nobody prepares women for being declined for sex. Like we're taught that men are these always sexual beings, and I do remember the first time I wanted to have sex with a guy and he didn't. I was confused. I was like, I thought you always what? I don't. This doesn't compute with what I have been taught about men. I'm confused. So, standards for sex for different genders are ridiculous, and I hate them. Anyway, continue.
Well, just something else that came up in like the last chapter of the book, which is something we referenced last time, was kind of like multiamory and kink in the military. And so I ran into this quote that I will just read, talking about the United States Air Force back in like the 1940s. And here's the quote. Joan and Dwight Dixon, who I think are just researchers, explained to someone else that these warriors, the Air Force people, and their wives shared each other as a kind of tribal bonding ritual, with a tacit understanding that the 2/3 of husbands who survived would look after the widows. So the military had just been poly and kinky forever.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it says the practice continued after the war ended, and by the late 1940s, military installations from Maine to Texas and California to Washington had thriving swing clubs. So apparently, if you're poly, like, the military is the place to be.
Interesting. I mean, that makes sense. Interesting.
It does, but just like, who would have thought? Who would have thought?
I have not been told. Nobody told me that was polyamory even with the military.
Yeah, so I guess just speaking of the military, as I mentioned last episode, the reason why I now know about the polyamory in the military is because I'm talking to this guy who I met on Hinge who is in the military. And it's been... I never have been in a quote unquote romantic relationship, unless you count the like 2 days I was dating that one guy in like 5th grade. But I don't know. I've been thinking a lot about what like romance means. And I was talking with Leah last night about like I talked to her a lot about gender and sexuality, but last night she actually like gave me some of her theories of her own. And like, we had a lot of the same thoughts on gender and sexuality, which like makes sense since like we're very close friends, but she just never voiced them before. So it was interesting.
Sorry, I'm going to random tangent really quick while I'm thinking of this. I was thinking the other day, when I was dating Lindsay, on our first date, we were talking about our previous relationships. And I jokingly brought up, I don't remember if you were, yeah, you would have been born, but you would have been little. When I was in preschool, I was engaged to triplets because there were these 3 triplets. They were all boys and they all had crushes on me. And I remember as a preschooler, we had decided I was going to marry all 3 of them and we were going to get 3 houses right next to each other as adults. And I would just rotate between the houses. And as a preschooler, this was our plan. And we articulated this to our parents.
She was a poly preschooler.
That's what I was saying. Like, I hadn't even put that together until we really started exploring polyamory as an identity. I hadn't thought about that in forever, but when I was on this date with Lindsay and I was talking about it, I was like, oh my God, I have been polyamorous since preschool. Like,
day one, man.
Day one. I have always. This has always been me. Anyway.
Yeah, but so basically Leah was talking and she was like, I think that romance, like similar to me, she was like, I think that there isn't really a difference between like platonic and romantic relationships, except that romantic is like the intersection of emotional attraction and physical attraction, which again, you know, I don't know the experience of like people who are asexual, who have romantic feelings for someone. And, you know, because I think, you know, there are asexuals who, you know, still like to kiss and cuddle and stuff. So I don't know, but that's just kind of how I'm thinking of it right now. And I don't know, that puts... I don't know. I feel like that characterization takes off a lot of pressure that like I've just felt, because like when I think about trying to be a romantic partner, it just feels like, oh, well, I don't know, who is it? Like, who do I be? Who do I become? Like, do I have to be someone different? Where it's like, oh, like it can just be like your best friend who you also have sex with sometimes, and it's like, okay, like, yeah, I have friends. I can do that.
That's how I've done all of my relationships. Like I even struggle using the word partner because it feels too serious. Like I typically prefer to just call them lovers, but most of the people who I guess, you know, you would maybe characterize as my partners are just like people I'm really close friends with who I also have sex with.
Yeah. So I don't know. And like Leah, I was freaking out yesterday because I've been so in my head just about like, what is romance? And she was like, and I was like, am I romantic? Am I like core romantic? Like, what am I? And she was like, Jen, like, you don't need to put a label on it. Like, that's okay. And I was like, weird of you to tell me that, because like I also don't believe in labels, but it's just been so weird to try to like articulate how I feel and how that's different from the norm. So it's weird because now we're seeing a role reversal where Jen's like, I need language as a tool, but I don't
Language
know.
is a tool. Language, I've said this before, I'll say it again. Language is a model, and models are not going to be right, but they are useful. Models will be wrong a lot of the time, but they are helpful. They are a tool to convey meaning and help us understand our lived experience.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if that also, you know, makes me a solo polyamorist, because like after reading this book, like pair bonding, I literally just do not think is natural for human beings. And so like, I don't know. I just want to live in a polyamorous commune. Like that's all I want.
Well, in this whole debate of like, what's natural, what's not natural, like, I don't really care. Like, I care what works best for us. Like, I don't think there's necessarily like a thing we were meant to do or designed to do or whatever. Like, I think we should just do what works for us. And I think we've been doing this big mass social experiment of pair bonding for the last couple hundred maybe years, and it hasn't worked. Like, half of marriages end in divorce, and a lot of them end in murder. Like, I think we've determined, like, when people go missing or get murdered, the first person they look at is the spouse. Like, I think we can safely say this giant social experiment of pair bonding has failed. Like, if you want to pair bond, you can pair bond. Again, I know that we're not supposed to exclude monogamous people. They're valid. It's fine. They exist. Whatever. I just think we've gotten too monogamous centric, whatever the word is. We still haven't figured out what the term is for
Monoganormative.
mononormative, whatever it is. We've gone too far with this whole monogamy thing, and we need to stop. We need to have other options be seen as acceptable.
Yeah. And I don't know, something else I've been thinking about, which I know you'll have a lot to say about this, the fact that we call, you know, romantic disentanglements breakups. And I was like, why does it have to be a break? Why can't it be a budding, a sprouting? We're going in a different direction.
This is a thing I have been going through with Fred. So Fred, we talked about in episode 3. We had just started talking, I think, a month before we filmed episode 3. Fred identified as monogamous, but he really liked me. I really liked him. So we were kind of seeing where things went. And Fred did decide at the end of the day that he continues to identify as monogamous, and he does not wish to be in a romantic relationship with me while I am seeing other people. And that is fine. And when we ended things, just a testament to how, again, I don't want to say superior, but superior polyamory is than monogamy. When we decided not to pursue a romantic relationship, I was fine, because I was like, yeah, cool, we'll just have a friendship. That works for me. I still have my romantic needs met elsewhere, and like, I still really like you, and honestly, this isn't going to change our relationship very much, because we couldn't be physical anyway because of COVID. So I was like, this doesn't really change anything for me. I'm fine. He was a mess. He was so sad, and he's still so sad. And I have been trying really hard to like emotionally support him, because I know it's really difficult what he's going through. But also, I just don't think you need to be sad. Like, your feelings are valid. That's an important thing to say. And they are, but I think friendships are just as great as romantic relationships. And I think we can still get a lot out of our relationship. But he really hasn't talked to me very much since we decided not to pursue a romantic relationship. And it does kind of bother me that, and I know, Jen, I ranted to you about this and you disagreed, but I have always felt, not with Fred, but with people in the past who, like, when we've decided not to pursue a romantic relationship and then they've completely lost interest in me, then it's like, okay, so did you only have interest in me as my potential for your romantic partner? Like, was I not valued as a person in any other way? Like, that is hurtful. Like, it makes me feel like you didn't see me as like a valuable person for myself, but rather for what I was doing for you, right? Like, if you only wanted me in your life, if there was a possibility we could be romantic partners, and you don't want me in your life, if that's not what's happening, then I don't feel like you really liked me ever. Like, I feel like it was more about you than it was about me.
Yeah, I mean, so Roger, who this guy I'm talking to, like, honestly, props to him, because I have put him A, through polyamory boot camp, and B, just
Well, it sounds like boot camp is polyamory boot camp. Ayo.
That's good. But so also part of my polyamorous policy, which maybe isn't a good one, but basically I just, my whole thing is honest, open communication. And so I've just told him every single thought I have about relationships and my past emotional baggage, basically in the span of like 1 to 2 weeks that we've been talking. So he's been a real trooper. Haha, pun intended. But
all the military puns.
And he has said, because like I've several times, been like freaking out and been like, I don't know, like maybe I'm just aromantic, maybe I don't even like you, I don't know. And he's been very cool. And like, I guess we haven't put it to the real test because I haven't been like, we're done. But he's always been like, listen, like if you're aromantic, if you don't like want to be my girlfriend, like that's fine. I still think you're super cool and I still want to be your friend. So like, props to him.
Roger. I love that, Roger.
Well, he is also INFJ, which I was a little like, I don't know if two INFJs can work together, but then I was like, Jen, Myers-Briggs is like not 1,000% real. Like Myers-Briggs is a personality test and it gives you 4 letters, which are like different personality characteristics.
The way you convinced me Myers-Briggs was a little bit real is that INFJ is like the rarest of personality types. Like, so INFJs are like 1% of the population. Like, it's the rarest personality type there is on the Myers-Briggs scale.
Especially for guys too, I think.
Yeah, for guys too. And all of my best friends are INFJs. So, and that blew my mind because there aren't many of you out there, but all the people that I have gravitated to in my life have been INFJs. Like it's crazy. The one long-term monogamous relationship I had with Sebastian, he was an INFJ. The guy I was with after him, also INFJ. You, INFJ. Best friend from high school, INFJ. Like it's wild. There's only 1% of you out there, but all of the people in my life I have been drawn to have been INFJs, which could be a coincidence. I don't know. But a lot of people put a lot of work into designing the personality test for Myers-Briggs. So, I mean, there is some science to it.
Well, I'm trying to find the website I was looking at because I don't think I've explained it before, but my theory with Myers-Briggs is that you should like match on your inner letters, especially the second letter, and be opposite on your outer letters. And my theory is because your inner letters, and so like the inner 2 letters I say are kind of like your values, and so you should share that with your partner, but then the outer 2 letters are your like approach, and so having those be different is kind of good because they're very complementary, because if you have 2 like anal types together, like they're going to drive each other crazy, and if you have 2 like very lax people together, then like nothing's going to get done. So that's why as an INFJ, I think that my ideal type is probably going to be an ENFP, which is actually what Leah is.
Me also. Well, I'm an ENFJ, but I'm an ENFJP split because my J is like 51% and my P is like 49%. So I'm really a switch. I'm a switch in all aspects of my life, but I'm a switch in ENFJ and ENFP. And so Rick is an INFP and Zach is an INFJ. So both of my partners right now agree with that. We're the same on the inside and then opposites on the outside because the JP for me flip, which is why they complement each other so well, because I have a flip for my J and a flip for my P. It's great.
Yeah, well, I think that the second letter, the NS scale, is the most important, which N is like being really intuitive, being like interested in like abstract thought and ideas, whereas like S is like interested in more like facts and like reality and concrete. So I think that I could probably get along with almost anyone who is an N, but I do think that like my ideal type would be an ENFP. But again, like this isn't like super sciencey. This is just kind of a thing that I like because it helps me make sense of the world. But on this one side I found there was a little chart about like romantic matches. And for the INFJ, they list ENTP, ENFP, INFJ, INFP and ENFJ. And my friend Danny, who is also one of my closest friends, is an INFP. So I don't know. Anyway.
Danny and I vibed. I like Danny. Danny's a good dude. If Danny was a little older, I would go for Danny. But Danny's probably a little young.
He also has crippling social anxiety, which makes it very difficult to do anything.
Yeah, that too. Well, I mean, Zach doesn't have crippling social anxiety, but it's quite a bit. And Sebastian also. Sebastian, I would argue, his social anxiety may have been crippling. There were a lot of parties we had to leave because he was like, I can't. So I do have experience in the department of partners with social anxiety.
Well, so the Myers-Briggs, depending on which site you take it on, will give you like a percentage of what letter you are, and Danny is 99% introverted, so...
Well, I am 99% extroverted, so
that would be interesting. Anyway, what I was going with is that if Roger is INFJ, you two will probably hit it off great, so...
Seems like a good dude. I do like boys who don't pressure women into romantic relationships. Like, my kink is people who are like, I value you as a person regardless of what our relationship status is. That gets me going. I can't even, just... panty dropper right there. I value you as a person. Take me.
Yeah, I don't really have a segue, but another thing I wanted to talk about was you mentioned one time, Liz, that I mentioned in a previous podcast episode, like being a woman. You were like, you say you're non-binary, but like, also say you're a woman, and we talked about that, but it was also funny because...
Wait, what did I say?
You were like, oh, you say you're non-binary, but then you also said you were a woman in the podcast.
Oh, I was pointing out that you had said both of those things.
Yes.
Okay, I thought you had said I was like critiquing you for your identity, and I was like, what? No, I didn't. What? No, I didn't.
Yeah, no. So I forget how this came up, but I was talking with Roger about it. I like told him I was non-binary or maybe just didn't believe in gender. And he was like, oh, so like, what are your pronouns? And so I went into this whole thing, which is kind of what I told you, which is like, do I believe in gender? No. Do I think it serves any function? No. At the same time, no matter how queer I look, most people, before they, know how I identify, will assume I am a woman. And like, I have no very strong feelings against the female gender. It's just that, like, I don't really care. And so I do think I tend to operate in the female space just because at the moment, it is kind of hard to operate in a genderless way. And I also mentioned, I might cut this out because I don't want to offend people, but like, I don't use they, them pronouns because... I don't know. If you use them, I will use them. I will respect you, and that's cool. You should use your pronouns that you like. But like, am I going to use them? No, because it is plural.
Okay, no. I will fight you on this. I will fight you on this. They, them was originally singular. We repurposed it later in linguistics to become plural.
Yes, but we live in the later. We don't live in the original.
Jen, we construct language. We construct society. We can decide to change it. We can decide they, them is singular.
Hard. But
I don't fucking care if it's hard, Jen. Learning that your friend has new pronouns is hard, but we fucking do it because we care about them, okay?
Yes, but since they, them is presently plural, and it would be nice to have a plural pronoun and a gender-neutral singular pronoun, wouldn't it just be better to just invent a new set of pronouns that was singular and gender-neutral?
So we did have those. We had Z's or Zim is what we did for a couple of years. And I knew people in college who used Z's or Zim. And I don't remember why the queer community kind of strayed away from that. But we did for several years. We had Z, Zim, Zer was the gender neutral singular pronoun. And you'd have to ask somebody who's more knowledgeable than me why we stopped doing that. But I know that we did try doing that and decided later it was better to do.
So anyway, all I'm saying is I if we have to pick a social grammatical battle, I would rather invent new ones than repurpose they. Because if we repurpose they, then what is our plural pronoun?
You could do sie, zim, zer if you wanted to. Like, you could start using that if you
but
want.
I've also said this with some of my queer friends who have asked me about my pronouns, because I say, I don't believe in gender, but then use she, her pronouns. And what I've said is that, I don't know, this is a little bit like what you said, Liz, about like cashing in your privilege. Like, I just don't like, I'm also a people pleaser. So I just don't like the idea of, and like, again, you know, I probably should do this more to like make it easier for others, but like, I just don't like the idea of being like, hi, my name's Jen, I use ze, zim, zer pronouns. Like, it just feels like everyone will judge me, and I prefer the approach of like getting to know someone, having them accept me as a person, and then being like, hey, by the way, you know, here are other pronouns. That may be a cowardly approach. I recognize that. Maybe someday I will change it, but like,
I don't think you owe anybody any information about yourself upon first meet. I don't think you need to give people your real name the first time you meet them. Like, if you're not comfortable sharing whatever pronouns, like, you do you. That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, would I love everyone to have gender neutral pronouns and that just to be the default? Yes. So I don't know. It's just also like, it's never been a thing. True, I want to get rid of gender, but I've also just like never felt the urge to like use different pronouns. Like, I felt called to cut my hair, and I feel called to dress very queerly, and I feel called to not shave, which I don't know if we've actually mentioned on this podcast before.
We did talk about it. When we talk about mom stopped shaving her legs in support of you before, when she initially did not support you. Yeah, we talked about it with my tattoo and stuff. We've discussed it. I know we don't shave.
Okay. But anyway, so it's just like, it's not something I've yet felt called to, and like, maybe someday I will. I don't know.
Yeah. You gotta pick your battles. I mean, being queer is hard. It's fucking hard. Like, being queer in a society is hard. I mean, queer, literally, while we're on the topic of linguistics, queer basically translates to just like different or non-normative, and being non-normative in any way in a society that's so structured is difficult, and you got to choose your battles. And if right now pronouns are not a battle you want to fight, then yeah, you're doing other stuff. It's fine. You do you.
Yeah. Well, so Danny, I am slowly converting to polyamory, but he's not quite there yet. But he's a lot into politics, and we were discussing how we're really great friends and really close, but I'm obsessed with gender theory and he's obsessed with politics, and like, we basically just take turns ranting about our different passions to each other, and like listening to the other one be like, yeah, that's cool, and then be like, okay, now let's talk about my thing. But we get along fine. Anyway, so he was talking about like, oh, the countries that are doing really well are like the smaller, more homogenous countries, and I was like, yeah, that makes sense, because they more so mimic like the tribal communes that we used to live in and like grew up in our pre-agricultural society. And he's like, shut the fuck up, Jennifer. I don't want your polyamory in my politics. Anyway, that was funny. Yeah, but so something I also wanted to talk about related to like feeling called to do things and like gender especially is in the last episode, when I was talking about the people who could top me, which was essentially anyone, and I mentioned
anyone.
Which Lizzie made a very funny post on our Instagram story about. If you see a funny Instagram post, it's probably Lizzie.
I'm a comedic genius.
I like to do more aesthetic ones.
Lizzie does all the funny stuff. Jen does all the aesthetic things.
It just reminded me, and I don't remember if I talked to you about this or not, but so I started identifying as queer in the fall of 2019, and then spring 2020 we went into pandemic.
Wait, you didn't even identify as queer prior
to Barcelona?
Oh yeah, we did talk about that. You're right. Yeah, okay, never mind. That just seems so recent. And
it's over a year ago.
I've known you were queer for so long.
Everyone knew I was queer except me. Het lag is a real thing. It affects so many people.
It really is. It really is.
But so anyway, so Barcelona was in fall of 2019, discovered I was queer. everyone knew before me. I was the last to know. But so then spring 2020, we got sent to lockdown. That was when I really started getting onto like queer social media, which is, you know, with all the faults of social media, it does provide a space for like marginalized and like smaller disparate communities to like come together and share things. I'm like, I have learned basically everything I know about queerness and a lot about polyamory from just like Instagram and Twitter.
Gay TikTok is my favorite.
But that's what I wanted to talk about, because I think, and I don't know when, but like, I feel like at some point during my life, probably several years ago, when like trans rights were, you know, like coming into like media attention and becoming more mainstream, I remember being like, you know, not probably mildly transphobic, and being like, you know, like, that's cool, that's them, but like also just being like, that sounds kind of weird, like I can't really picture that. But then like once I got onto TikTok specifically, TikTok algorithm sent me to trans TikTok, and I was like, oh my God, there are so many beautiful, amazing trans people out there, like trans men and trans women. And so I just went through this like transformation of like essentially just being ignorant about trans people to being like, I think trans people are so attractive, which I don't want that to come off like a fetish, because
I was gonna say, don't like fetishize.
no, yeah, but and maybe it is, like, I'm willing to accept that maybe I am still in a wrong place, but how I think about it in my mind is like, what is so attractive to me is like, I think about gender all the fucking time. And so to be with someone who has so like thoroughly thought about their gender that they were like willing to, you know, A, go to great lengths, and B, you know, risk a lot of social ostracization and such, like, I don't know, just someone who is that in tune with their gender is so attractive to me. I don't know.
One thing you've told me is that you've always been really attracted to authenticity and like people who are really like, they know their true selves and present their true selves. And so I definitely think for you, being attracted to trans people makes perfect sense, because every trans person has had to go through a lot of self-exploration and self-acceptance. So I could definitely see how, you know, from an authenticity standpoint, that would be super attractive to you.
So I mean, I don't know, when I started getting this feeling, I was like, I don't want to like this isn't a fetish thing. And it's also not a fetish thing because like I am very much not like, physicality means very little to me for like for like sexual attraction, because I am so pansexual, and that like it is the person, like I want to fuck the person, I don't care what package you come in. So anyway, trans men, trans women, trans non-binaries, trans everyone, we support you, we love you. Yes, so I wanted to say that.
Actually, I learned today while I was doing research for Trans Day of Visibility is coming up, and as part of my pride group at work, I was putting together some educational stuff, and I always learn things when I put together educational things. I love it. But so the definition of a trans person is just someone who does not identify with the gender they were assigned at birth. So that actually technically encompasses non-binary people. So non-binary people fall under the trans umbrella.
So does that make me trans?
Yeah.
Huh. Would you look at that? You learn something every day.
Although I say that, but I do also often hear people refer to trans and non-binary as separate things. So I don't know if that's widely accepted, but from a purely, I'm a mathematician and everything is logic. And so from the logical definition of trans, non-binary would by definition be included in the transgender identity.
Well. What do you know?
You learn something new every day.
I feel better. I don't know. After talking with that therapist lady, I was just like,
it's so easy to be invalidated by people when you're queer. Like I feel like a lot of times I'll get to this point where I feel super empowered, but it takes the littlest thing to be like, I'm not valid.
Yeah, so that just put me in a funk, but I don't know. Also, it just is reestablishing my belief that like I do need to become a polyamorous queer therapist, because like, if not me, then who? Like, who better? I don't know.
You are valid. You are worthy. Your lifestyle is valid.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess
some therapists are just dumb.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm hoping to get in to see an actual not crazy therapist
Thanks for listening. If you liked this episode, subscribe and leave us a review on your podcast app.
If you really like us, like us, send this episode to a friend, family member, partner, your boss, anyone else in your social circle, the people you want to convert to polyamory. Start a conversation.
Feel free to send us any comments or questions over social media.
So thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.